Today we're doing 7.2 notes. This is on how to graph a quadratic equation, which is the parabola, which is a U-shaped graph we've discussed in day 1. So for our notes, again, this one I really suggest if you're able to print this PDF file, it would probably be the easiest way. But if you don't have a PDF file, then the work that we have to do, you can do a lot of it on your own without a graph. And then when I do the graph part, you're going to have to watch very carefully. Okay, so first and foremost, it says steps to graphing a quadratic equation, which is your parabola. 1, find the x-coordinate of the vertex. Now, when we did this in day 1, I had you guys label. So instead of doing the step 1, it said, I had you guys label A, B, and C in the equation. Okay, so C. Alright, so down here we have A in front of x squared. B does not exist because there's no x here in the middle. And then C is the last number that doesn't have a variable. Now, if I were you, I would probably do all my work right here. But that's a tiny space, especially for me doing video notes. So I am going to use a separate piece of paper to do the notes on for the work for this part that I would do right here normally in class. Okay, so first says I have A is 2, C is 3, and it says find the x-coordinate of the vertex using x equals negative b over 2a. So that step 1 would be x equals negative b over 2a. And then I would plug in b. Well, I don't have a b, so that's going to be negative 0 over 2 times a, where a is 2. So if I simplify this, well, we know that 0 can't be negative, so it's just 0 divided by 2 times 2 is 4. And 0 divided by 4 is 0. So this 0 represents my x value. Step 2 says substitute x to find the y-coordinate of the vertex. And we also have done this in day 1. So we take that 0 for x and we plug it into x in this equation, this original equation. So here's my original equation. Okay. We also have discussed that we would use parentheses when there's a number in front of your variable. That number is called a coefficient. So when there's a coefficient in front, we got to use parentheses. Okay. So now I would say, well, x is 0, so 0 squared, and I put it in parentheses. So 0 squared is 0. And then I have 2 times 0, which is 0, plus 3, making y 3. So what I have learned from this information is that my vertex is 0, 3. Okay, x and then y. And then I would go record this right here in my problem. So my vertex is 0, 3. Okay, I'm going to put this aside for now. Okay, so now what I do, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. It says that we want to use the pattern 1, 3, 5 to graph the parabola. So first, I'm going to graph that 0, 3. So here is 0, up 3. Okay, then you take, it says use the leading coefficient. That is your a value. So whatever a is, that's your leading coefficient. So the 2. I take the 2 and I multiply it to each one of these. Okay, so 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 5 times 2 is 10. Then I pretty much think of this like how to graph a slope. So when I look at the number 2, I know that that's really over 1. And 6 is really over 1. And 10 is really over 1. Okay? So now I'm going to go from this point, and I'm going to go up to right 1. But a parabola is symmetric, so both sides are the same. So I'm going to also go up to left 1. Then from that point, I'm going to go up 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to go off the graph just a little bit. So up 6 and over 1. Now I'm also going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to go up 6, left 1. I'm going to draw that U shape. Okay. So now, ooh, that kind of looks off. But I can see that I have a symmetric graph. And it says, is this a min or a max? So I see that my vertex is a low point. A low point is a min. And the axis of symmetry, we draw that right through the vertex. And so that vertex, remember, it aligns with your x. So if x is 0, that line should go right through 0, which it does. And so x is 0. Okay, so remember those match. Okay, for part B, we're going to follow those steps above. So step 1, we're going to label our A. We don't have a B in our C. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to work it out on a separate sheet of paper for you. Okay, so for this one, this would be example 1B. Okay. So divide the vertex, step 1, x equals negative b over 2a. In our problem, we don't have a b, so that would be 0. And then 2 times a was a negative 3. So if I simplify this, we've got 0 over negative 6, and 0 divided by negative 6 is 0. So currently I know that my vertex, the first part is 0. Step 2 is I take the original equation, and remember, put parentheses around the x squareds. Okay, and then we're going to plug that 0 into x. So 0 squared is 0. Negative 3 times 0 is 0. Plus 2 means that my y is 2. So currently, my vertex would be 0, 2. So now over here, we're going to fill in 0, 2. We're going to graph that. So 0, 2. Okay. Then my a value, okay, remember the a value is a negative 3. So we're going to multiply each one of these numbers by negative 3. We always use this pattern 135. Okay, so 135 times your a value gives you how many numbers you're moving up or down. So here, 1 times negative 3 would be negative 3. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. And remember, it's like slope, so this is over 1. So now I'm going to go down 3 over 1, down 3 again, and left 1. Then from that new points that I just drew, I'm going to go down 9. And then over 1. Then down 9 again, and then over 1 again. So this one I have a really skinny U shape. Remember, when we draw it, we want to make sure it's kind of like a curve here. Okay, is it a min or a max? Well, this is a max. This is a high point. Your vertex is a high point. And then that line of symmetry is going through the vertex. Okay, so remember, you always find that vertex, draw it right through the vertex, and that would be x equals 0, which again, that has to match the x and the vertex. They always match. Okay, moving on to example 2. Okay, so we have example 2a. So for example 2a, again, we're going to label our A, our B, and our C, and then our A in this case would be a 1. Okay, so looking over here at the work page that I'm using, I have example 2a, and the first step is to plug in to x equals negative b over 2a. So if I plug in negative b, that negative stays, but then you see that b is a negative 6, so we have another negative and then a 6. And then those two negatives become positive to make a positive 6. Then we have 2 times a is 1, and so 2 times 1 is 2. We divide this to get 3. So currently I know that my vertex is 3 something. Then I take that 3 and I need to plug it back into the original equation. So in this equation, I don't have a coefficient that's written here, so I don't have to do parentheses. But here I would do the parentheses. Okay. So y equals 3 squared minus 6 parentheses times that 3 plus 4. So this would give you 9. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18 plus 4. 9 minus 18 is negative 9 plus 4. And when I combine that, we get negative 5. So my vertex is 3, negative 5. Okay, so now I'm going to plot that point. So I'm going to go over 3, down 5. Right here, my A value is 1, so I'm going to multiply each one of these by 1, and then that would give me 1, 3, and 5. And then again, remember, that's like over 1. Okay, so I'm going to go from the vertex, up 1, right 1, back to the vertex, up 1, left 1. Because remember, these points are symmetric. From the new point, we're going to go up 3 this time. So 1, 2, 3, over 1, 1, 2, 3, over 1. And then from that point up 3, we're going to also go up 5 since I can fit it on the graph. And then that will create my U shape. I see that that's a low point where the vertex is at, so low point is a minimum. And the axis of symmetry goes through the vertex. And so that would be x equals, it's a 3 that it goes through, and we can see that that's also what the x value is here in the vertex, and they always match. Okay, lastly, you will see that in this one they wrote f of x equals, but we learned that f of x is just y, so in this case you're still just graphing an equation, it just has f of x instead of y. But we label, so A, B, and C. Okay, so this would be example 2b. So step 1, we plug into that equation. Okay, so b is 8. So I have a negative from the formula, 8, and then over 2 times a, and negative 2 is a. So I have negative 8 over negative 4, and this divides to be 2. So currently my x value is 2. Okay, then for step 2, We take the equation given, we check to see where does parentheses need to go. So that would be going here and there. And then I plug that 2 into both of those x's to find the y value. So negative 2 times 2 squared plus 8 times 2 minus 9. So negative 2, 2 squared makes 4. 8 times 2 would be 16, and then bring down that minus 9. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8, and then I bring down the rest of the problem. So now I'm just going to be adding and subtracting from left to right. So negative 8 plus 16 is 8, minus 9 is negative 1. So my vertex is a 2, negative 1 here. So I'm going to fill that in here. And graph it. So over 2 down 1. My leading coefficient was a negative 2. So I'm multiplying each one of these by negative 2, giving me negative 2, negative 6, and negative 10. And remember, this is still over 1. So from that point, that negative needs to go down. So I'm going to go down 2, right 1, and I'm going to go left 1. From the new points, I'm going down 6, and then over 1, down 6, and the other way 1. I can't fit the 10, so I'm going to go ahead and draw that U shape. Is this a min or a max? Well, that's a max because that's a high point. And the axis of symmetry going through that vertex would be x equals 2. Again, that matches with the 2 right there.